Well, the offseason is we're chugging along at this point. Ron Hextall has not spoken to the media at this point. I would assume if he's going to be on the job for this year, I mean, he'll probably speak tomorrow, Friday, maybe sometime during the weekend. But for today's episode, we're going to get into an article that Josh Yohe wrote. And a part of the article that I thought was definitely really interesting. I put it a little bit out. I think Adam Gretz of Pro Hockey Talk put that blurb out. And we're also going to get into, why the power play needs to be a lot better, what I would like to see from that unit next year, and a couple of other things as well. So we're going to get into that episode right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. You want to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at @LO_Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. I just actually wrapped up watching the Carolina-New York game. And, that's what the Rangers get for trying to play prevent defense in the third period. They dropped that game one. They go down 1-0. And, I'm probably going to sound maybe a little bit salty. I do hope that the Rangers kind of get speed bagged here. I've gotten over that series for the most part. I'm still a little bit, I guess, just upset because, the Penguins played so well and they could not win this series. But, the Rangers, they came out well against Carolina those first two periods. Carolina really had no answer for them. And then the third period came and the Rangers took the foot off the gas. Carolina was out shooting them 13-0, I think. And Rangers only had one shot attempt through the first 10 minutes. It looked like they didn't even gain the offensive zone for the entire period. Carolina is able to tie it with about 2 minutes left with Sebastian Aho, and then former Penguin, two-time Stanley Cup champion Ian Cole gets the winner. So congratulations to Carolina. Congratulations to Ian Cole. I will always have good things to say about him. It's a shame that him and Mike Sullivan did not get along towards the end because I definitely think the Penguins could have used him down the stretch here these last couple of years, especially, during the couple of the Jack Johnson years. I would have loved to have him in the lineup over Jack Johnson, to say the least, but that's a whole different spiel. But so the big thing I want to touch on for this first segment was this article that Josh Yohe wrote today. And basically it was about, where the Penguins here, where did the Penguins go from here? Like what's next for them and all this stuff. And, the big thing, this is the big blurb from Josh. Earlier this season, Fenway Sports Group, they told Ron Hextall they wanted to see his vision for the team in writing. Hextall, a creature of habit in the middle of regular season responsibilities, explained that his plan for the Penguins' future was in his head and not easily articulated by the written word. So that is basically like, so say you're back in 7th, 8th, 9th grade, right? You have a math quiz, you're in algebra class, whatever. And your teacher's like, okay, you need to show your work on this or you're not going to get the answer right. I don't care if you know the answer. And you turn it in, you put the right answer down, you don't show your work, and your teacher's like, oh, well, no wonder why you got it wrong. I told you to show your work and what you had to do to get to this answer. And this is basically the same exact thing with Ron Hextall and Fenway Sports Group. He says he has a plan. He has it in his head. He doesn't really want to write it down, but Fenway's like, we want you to do it. And as Josh says, he was told to write his vision for the Penguins' future anyway. Hextall respected the ownership's request and provided a written summary painting a vivid picture of the Penguins' future on his watch. Only the ownership circle knows Hextall's words and his visions. If the Fenway Sports Group is satisfied with it, he will remain as the GM. If not, an already fascinating summer in Pittsburgh could become more tumultuous. So what does the ending mean? Again, if Fenway Sports Group does not approve of Ron Hextall's plan, they're going to cut him. Or they're going to cut bait with him, and they're going to bring in a brand new general manager that they want. If they do like the plan, they're going to keep him there, and he's going to continue with his duties. But definitely, not the greatest start for the offseason for Ron, at least. My TV's on here in the back. I've been watching the Battle of Alberta because it's so much fun. But again, definitely that's not the note you really want to start off on. I don't think, to say the least. Actually, I'm going to turn this off as I'm recording this. If I can get it on YouTube. Okay, perfect. There we go. Again, not the greatest note there. I think, you should have just decided to do it the first time. And again, this goes off what I talked about on my Tuesday episode. Fenway, they're probably conducting a very thorough review of the organization right now, top to bottom, players, off ice personnel, everyone in the organization. Because again, they didn't spend $900 million just to sit on their butts. That's a lot of freaking money that they decided to spend. And they're going to want to make sure that the organization is in the best hands moving forward. They want the best people in charge for everyone. And, that's the way they see it. And, again, if Ron Hextall is not going to be the guy to lead the Penguins into the future, I'm sure they will have no problem hiring their own general manager, hiring their own president of hockey operations. There's another member, I think, of the Penguins media today that said that Brian Burke may not be back next year. So that's now 2 people that have said this. I think this one, was the super genius, of course. I think someone retweeted it on my Twitter timeline. His track record is spotty. I know I probably have some Mark Madden fans that listen to this show. I'm definitely not a big fan of him just because of his anti-Geno stuff. But, that's him and Rossi. Rossi went on 93.7 The Fan, and he said, he does not expect Burke back. So again, that's 2 people right now saying this. I want to see if Josh Yohe reports this. I want to see if Elliot Friedman reports this, and some of these other people that are obviously some Pittsburgh people, some national people, to say the least. But the team also has to hire a president of the team, not just a president of hockey ops, because David Morehouse, of course, resigned. And there's still really been not too much on that, I don't think. I think they're probably conducting that internally very quietly. And again, this just goes with what they're doing of conducting a very thorough review of the organization. So that said, I would have to think if Brian Burke and Ron Hextall are not going to be the guys moving forward with what is it going to be a very pivotal point in this franchise's history, they're going to want to make that move sooner rather than later. Because again, think about it, the draft is coming up soon. Free agency's in a month and a half, just about. You're going to want to start those contract negotiations with Chris Letang, Evgeny Malkin, maybe Brian Russ, Ricardo Kelly, and Rodriguez. You're going to want a GM and a president of hockey ops in place fairly quickly because, if say both of them are not back, then Letang and his agent, they may be negotiating with someone that, they don't really know that well. So, they're going to have to make this decision really soon if there is one to be made. Again, right now, they're still employees of the team, both Burke and Hextall. Until they aren't, I'm not going to really speculate too much. But again, I thought it was an interesting point in Josh's article that I had to bring up. At least that blurb was intriguing to me. A couple other parts of the article that I really liked. A former Penguins executive told Josh about Sidney Crosby, still one of the best 3 to 4 players in the league. He goes, if you don't think that, then you don't understand the sport. He's damn near as great as he ever was. Yes. Sid is still a ridiculous player. I'm not saying any breaking news here or anything, but yes, he was still a top 3 to top 4 player in the league this year. And this was, I thought, also a big thing from Josh's article today. Numerous sources have confirmed to me that members of the Fenway Sports Ownership Group are extremely impressed with Mike Sullivan, and they view him as the Penguins coach for the present and the future. That's huge. I'm sure they saw the job that he was doing in the playoffs, and I'm sure they see that it was not his fault that they lost to the New York Rangers. Sullivan is one of the very best at this profession, other than Barry Trotz and John Cooper. People can argue those over Mike Sullivan. But there are not any other better coaches in this league, I don't think, better than Mike. So those are the main parts of Josh's article that I took away from that. Obviously mainly the Ron Hextall, Brian Burke thing. Let me know what you all think is going to happen down the YouTube comments, or you can DM me on social media and all that. Do you think that both Burke and Hextall will be back for next season, or do you think that Fenway Sports Group could be making a change and getting some fresh blood in there? Because, it sounds weird because they haven't been here too long, but Fenway Sports Group is very big in data and analytics. Brian Burke, bit of an old head. Ron Hextall uses them, but probably not as much as some of these other people would. Could that be a big difference maker for, Fenway and, Ron and how he wants to construct the team moving forward? I think that's going to have to be a big talking point as well. Now, coming up in the next segment, we're going to get to the power play and what I want to see going into next year. But before I get to that, you can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why should you choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more from the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business and do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. The prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you need from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. You can go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. You go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. And you can write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliable low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That is rockauto.com. All right, I'm back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. You want to follow me on Twitter, Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at @LNR_Penguins. So, conducting, some season reviews. That's why let's get to the power play. Outside of the goaltending, I think, obviously, the special teams go hand in hand. I'm honestly more disappointed in the power play than I am with the penalty kill. Because, I can understand you're giving up some goals to the Rangers special teams, and if it weren't for that even strength goal with 5:45 left, the Penguins would have won that series. Even though the PK was not that good, but the power play just had so many instances in this series where they could have taken the game over and they decided not to. Game 5 in New York, 5-on-3 for a full 2 minutes. You barely even get shots on goal. I think there was only 2 or 3 shots. During that time, you have a 5-on-3 for a minute 7 in game 6, 2-2 game in the second period, excuse me, and you're barely even able to get a shot on goal. That's unacceptable. And, I don't think Mike Sullivan is going to fire Todd Reardon. I think Todd is a good coach. Mike Matheson spoke glowingly about him at his exit day interview. I think, also I believe in Josh's article today, if I can find this here. Let me just make sure. Yeah. He says here, Todd loves Matheson. We all saw the difference working with Todd has made for Mike. He's going to be a monster moving forward. We all saw how great Mike was this year. The defensemen have made strides under Todd, but the power play, it regressed this year. And, normally he's known for running a really good power play, did it in Washington for several years. The Penguins had a very good power play when he was first an assistant coach under Mike Sullivan, not under Dan Bylsma, but this year, just not up to the standards that, I think a lot of Penguins fans have said, just because, there's so much talent on there. Sidney Crosby, Chris Letang, Jake Gensel, Evgeny Malkin, Brian Rust. With Rust is out, you can put Rickard Rakell up there. Evan Rodriguez was manning that top spot. Heck, even last year when Jared McCann was a Penguin, he was just absolutely killing it. But this year, I did not really think the puck movement was really that good. The zone entries left a lot to be desired. It seemed like the Penguins were trying to do a lot of east to west thing and not a lot of pucks, on net to create, traffic in front, havoc and all that to get those high danger chances. I think a lot of times they were looking for that perfect shot to beat a goaltender. Especially it felt like that at times in the series, even though they were peppering Shesterkin quite a bit. They scored 3+ goals in 6 of the 7 games, but when they would get a power play, they were looking for that perfect play. Outside of that Heinen goal in game 7 on the power play, they had the Brian Rust 5-on-3 goal in game 1. And I believe they had another second unit goal in this series. The power play really did not do much. And again, they're not getting traffic in front. The zone entries are not there. They were committing way too many turnovers. This playoff series against the Rangers, I don't think I've ever seen the Penguins commit that many turnovers on the power play. And, before people come into the comments and tell me, well, a lot of it was Evgeny Malkin. Sure, he did have some turnovers, but, Sidney Crosby in game 7 passed it literally right to a Ranger in the defensive zone, springs Tyler Mott for a breakaway. Tristan Jarry has to bail their butts out, to keep that a 3-2 game in the third period before Zibanejad tied it with 5:45 left. It's careless plays like that it's not good enough. And I want to see that cut down. The Penguins, their first unit this year, when they would get too comfortable or try to make a Harlem Globetrotter play, they would just be too careless with the puck. And, there were definitely a lot more shorthanded chances that I would like. Again, you should not be giving up a lot of chances when you're literally up a man. They call it a power play for a reason, or you are up a man. You are expected to get at least a lot of zone time, and you most of the time get a goal. or the Penguins, for whatever reason, this series, they lost that battle badly. The Rangers penalty kill was honestly not even that good during the regular season. I mean, it was above average, but it was still a unit that could be had. They didn't really have Tyler Mott for a lot of this series. Sure, they put out some of their best players, but the Penguins, they should have been able to do a lot more damage on the main event. And I was someone that was talking about how they should have started with the second unit at times, because the first unit just kept screwing up so freaking badly. And just, even in game one, Chris Kreider gets a shorthanded goal. I believe it was in, I think one of the home games, one of the 3 home games, I believe they gave up another shorthanded goal. It was not good enough. And, I'm sure Todd Reirden is going to go back to the drawing board and maybe, fine tune his things for the power play. And, I know the unit may look a lot different next year because Crystal Tang may not be back. Evgeny Malkin potentially might not be back. But, if it does look the same and the Penguins are able to get both those players re-signed, I just want to see more consistency. Power plays can really swing the momentum of games. And say the Penguins they did score in game 5. It's potentially a completely different game with how they are playing the rest of the game. Obviously the chain reactions are a lot different. Sidney Crosby probably doesn't even get hurt with that. But, down the stretch in the playoffs, it wasn't good enough. It needs to be a lot better. And, I'm just looking for it to be more consistent. I want better puck movement. I want more shots to the net and stop trying to go east-west, try to get that perfect play, cut down on the turnovers, these lazy passes. I also do want to see this. Mike Sullivan, sometimes he only puts his power play up there for 45 to 50 seconds. I don't want the team to, go full Alex Ovechkin over here and have him play for the full minute 50 to 2 minutes. I think, that's a little too much, in my opinion. But, maybe a minute 20, minute 25, then you can put your second unit on there. I think that's fine. I would like to see both Sullivan and Reirden give the first power play some more minutes, because I think if you're only doing 45 to 50 seconds and maybe they're not getting the zone, you want to change up the units. I still think that first unit should just get I think at least a little more time on ice. That's strictly my opinion, though. We'll see if Todd decides to change that up. So that concludes this segment on the power play and why it failed them. When they needed the most. It's just the Penguins have stunk at 5-on-3s for a while. That's the 5-on-4s. Those could obviously be better, but the 5-on-3s really have to be better. It looks like the Penguins. It looks like they're down 2 men when they have a 5-on-3. They only scored 1 5-on-3 goal in the series, and they had numerous instances of having. I don't even think the Rangers didn't even have a 5-on-3 in that series. That just goes to show how the Penguins just bungled that. So bad. Still a little more to get to for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. But before I get to that, I love brownies, but you know what I love more? Brownie batter. Sometimes I eat half the batter just while I'm making the brownies, especially, Ashley, my girlfriend. She absolutely loves making brownies with me. But imagine if you could lick that brownie spatula clean and get some protein in. You're in luck, because Built has a new creation, and this one is better than ever. The Brownie Batter Puff. You heard me right. This puff takes protein bars to a whole new level, and they're available right now on Built.com with 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, and 7 grams of sugar. Brownie Batter Puffs are the perfect pick-me-up for any day. All of them are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means that with Built, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy eating it. The Brownie Batter Puffs will have you completely forgetting that you are eating a protein bar. No need to pinch yourself. This is real life. You can go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, we're back here in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow this show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. I did want to touch on a couple last things with Josh's article today, because this had a lot of pretty good information on it, and he let everyone know about the Penguins' new ownership group. They don't like to rebuild. They have a lot of money and they're prepared to spend it. And again, they like their own people in charge. So again, if the Penguins do have cap space this summer, and say say they don't bring back Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang. Say, they want to go in a different direction. They want to put more youth in the lineup. Again, I want youth in the lineup, but I still want Crosby and Malkin back. I will disagree if they don't both come back. Okay. Let's say that happens. And, say, maybe one of Raquel and Rodriguez don't come back. Say Kapanen, he's gone too. All of a sudden, you do have a lot of cap room to play with where you can bring more some decently high-priced players in to build around Sidney Crosby and Jake Ensel and Mike Matheson and Tristan Jarry. I think Fenway Sports Group would spend that money because, again, they didn't spend $900 million to, I don't think be cheap here. With Liverpool, they spend their money. With the Boston Red Sox, they spend their money. The Red Sox are one of the richest teams in baseball. Now, I will, in case people do not know some history with Fenway Sports Group, so the Red Sox had Mookie Betts. For my baseball fans out there, he's one of the best players in the sport, probably top 5 player in the game. And a couple years ago, they actually traded him. The ownership group said, you know what, we don't think he's going to be that good in his future. And they got a big package back for him, but it was still a move that was met with some pessimism because he was still in his prime at the time. But the Fenway group, they said, you know what, we're going to go through with this. And, a year later, they were in the ALCS. They didn't go to the World Series, but, they were only a couple games away from winning that. And, the Red Sox right now, they're still they're still not bad on the show. I think they're set up for, good success, in my opinion. So, again, they're not afraid to make moves that I guess some of the fans won't like. And they're also not afraid to spend money to improve the team. So, again, I'll say this. Say they don't bring back Evgeny Malkin. I truly do believe they would go out into free agency and be open and be very willing to spending their money and spending up to the cap. As long as you have Sidney Crosby and Jake Ensel and some of these other core players, you are going to spend to the cap. I know the Penguins have been wanting to create cap space for a while now. I think Elliot Friedman touched on that in his 32 Thoughts blog and his podcast. They want more cap space moving forward, and they look like they're going to get it at least in some capacity, even if Malkin and Letang are back. But they still want some flexibility, so they're not 50,000 under the cap or something like that. But again, Fenway, they will have no problem spending up to the cap here, to say the least. There's also another thing I found very interesting from Josh here was about Brian Dumoulin. Many in the organization are concerned about him going into next year, and that age is playing a factor. The Penguins coach staff could not believe it. A source close to the Penguins coach staff said he's always been so solid. He was not anymore. The coaches had no idea what to make of it. It was shocking. And, this is what happens sometimes when you get over the age of 30. Your body starts to break down more. You're not as young as you used to be. You're not as good as you used to be. And now that contract is starting to look a little bit could that pave the way to P.O. Joseph coming up full-time? He's down in Wilkes-Barre. He had a pretty good year. He's been knocking on the door for a year or two. I mean, the Penguins, they will have options if they even if they bring Chris Letang back, they will still have an option to move one of their left-handed defensemen to bring P.O. Joseph up full-time. Because again, he's probably ready at this point. I mean, he's shown NHL flashes before. Last year he looked ready. The year before that, he looked ready a little bit. This is a player that I think the coaching staff and the management are very high on. So, yeah, I mean, I know the coach had no idea what to make of it, but at the end of the day, it's just his body's starting to break down. He's been banged up a lot more, and he may not have it, and maybe that leads to him being traded. Who knows? But I think it's going to be a very interesting summer for number 8. I would not be surprised either way. If they bring him back, I won't be surprised because, I think that'll be like a loyalty thing. But if they trade him and bring back like a forward or something like that, would not be surprised in the slightest just because, I mean, there were some people in the fan base clamoring for him to be scratched for like someone like Mark Friedman or something like that. And, sure, the play, it didn't, how do I want to say this? Matheson Letang was fine in the playoffs, but I still was more comfortable with Dumoulin up there. I know people were telling me, well, you're not really going to notice it. And, at times I didn't, but other times I did because he still is that steadying, calming presence that Letang has always needed throughout his career ever since they started playing together, during the 2015-16 season. Josh also talked to sources about John Marino. He said Sources told Josh he was frustrating for the coaches. He's a good kid. The coaches like him, but they just wanted to shake him to snap him out of the funk that he was in for most of the season. They just wanted more from him. And, I think they got their wish in the playoffs outside of that bad play in Game 7. That was some of the finest play I think I've seen from Marino's career. And if he can continue that good play going into next season, he will be worth that $4.4 million AAV and much more. I still want to see more offense from him. He only had one freaking goal in 80 plus games. It's hard to believe that he only had one goal all season. I really do not understand that, to say the least. But if he can bring out more offense, that's great. Obviously, he's going to be known for being a defensive defenseman. But I still would like to see more offense from him, to say the least. Josh also confirmed that Tristan Jarry is going to be the man moving forward. Management decided last year that in August that he was going to be the guy. And the Penguins Josh has been told that they believe he is the man moving forward. If they were, Casey DeSmith is UFA, Louis Domingue is a UFA. They should go out and get a backup. There's no excuses not to. Casey DeSmith, he's a fine backup goalie. That is what he is. But I still want a 1B goalie to come in here that can take starts away from Jarry and not have him play on a basically an every game basis. Because remember, you saw when the Canadians went to the final about a year ago, right? Carey Price didn't play as much down the stretch. And again, I'm not doing a full Tristan Jarry to Carey Price comparison here, but you saw that he didn't play as much because Jake Allen was able to take away some starts. If the Penguins can go out and get a veteran backup to take away some of those, it'll make Jarry more fresh and hopefully lessens the chance of him getting hurt at the end of the year. So those are my thoughts on some of the other stuff from Josh's article, and wanted to touch on the stuff from Fenway and wanted to get to the power play for this episode. So I really appreciate every one of you listening to this one. I will be back with another episode on Thursday. We're going to continue some season reviews. We're going to go into the penalty killing unit and what I'd like to see moving forward for next year. And then, we're going to start going into some player by player season reviews, and when news is made available, when Ron Hextall, Brian Burke tweets to the media, or if there's a move involving them, I will talk about that on the show. So again, thank you all so much for listening. I hope we all have a wonderful, wonderful Wednesday, and I will talk with you all on Thursday.